As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left. Cause I've been blasting and laughing so long that even my mama thinks that my mind is gone. But I ain't never crossed a man that didn't deserve it. Me be treated like a punk, you know that's unheard of. You better watch how you're talking and where you're walking, or you and your homies might be lying.
In the movie Dangerous Minds, Mrs. Johnson was placed in an academy in the school, which they called a school within a school, and these students that she had were students that were from low socioeconomic statuses and low performing grades in her class. The administration would put these students down, and as soon as they would come into the school, they already knew that that's why they're in that school, because of their grades and their socioeconomic status. They would even, in the movie, in the beginning she calls them students from hell because of the way they would behave. And even the principal at one point says, if one kid leaves, it's one less problem to worry about, when in reality, a principal should not look at one kid leaving as a less problem, because the student should not even be a problem to begin with. Another ethic that we saw was the sleepover with Emilio. A teacher should not have sleepover with students because other people can find out about it, parents, students, administration, and they can think bad about Mrs. Johnson because of this situation. So this is something that should not happen at all. Finally, another one was when Callie was pregnant, when they were trying to send her out to another school because she was trying, because she can be like passing it on to other kids when they're kind of like discriminating her because of her pregnancy, when they shouldn't. Like, it should be her option to go or not, because they weren't even giving her an option. They're kind of telling her, you're going to this school, and she didn't know she had an option. She thought it was something that had to happen. So overall, like, the pregnancy with Callie should be her decision, when that's an ethnic thing, because they're discriminating her and telling her she has to go.
So Ms. Luann Johnson, she's teaching karate to the students, and because this is an issue of liabilities for the teacher, this would ensue lawsuits from teachers, from teachers who are aware of the issue, and parents and the administration. Another area where Ms. Luann Johnson didn't stick to the curriculum is when she started to teach students poems. But the issue is not that poems are a bad thing for the students, it's the topic that she had given the students, which was death. And death is all right, but she, again, did not stick to the curriculum. She had to stick to reading a book, and she wasn't even aware that that book was part of the curriculum, because, again, she didn't go over it.
Another ethical problem was that Mrs. Johnson had good intentions about rewarding her students, but the way she did it, it was not like the best thing she could have done. She invited her students to a dinner where she paid the food and all that stuff. But the problem was that only one of the 3 students she invited, only one of them showed up to the restaurant. So it didn't look good. It looked like she was dating her student. So that's an ethical issue. And another thing is that while she was in the restaurant with Raul, Raul told her that he was not going to be able to go to school he was going to be absent for some days because he had to pay a jacket that he bought to go to that fancy restaurant. So in order for him to not miss school, the teacher gave him money. I think it was $200 that the teacher gave Raul. So that is not good either. You're not supposed to give your students money. And so, yeah, that was about it with the dinner. And another problem was that the teacher, another type of reward was that she took the students to the carnival, but she didn't ask for permission. And as a student, it is really important that you let the administration and the parents know about taking them to out of school, because maybe an accident can happen and nobody knew about it. So it is a problem that she's not taking into consideration, talking with the principals and the parents. She just took them to the carnival, and it is like a good thing for her to make a bond with her students and for them to feel comfortable with her and all that stuff. But maybe it's not the best thing to the best way to reward the students.
Okay, we also have another situation in the movie, which is a fight between two students. One of these students is Emilio, the leader of the classroom, and Raul, another classmate. The situation is that Mrs. Johnson knew about this fight and she didn't report it. She stopped it and asked them to not fight, and they accepted. But at the end, they still fighting. And the situation in here is that if you are a teacher, you have to report whatever situation is presented. You have to tell the principal or the administration so you don't have trouble in the future. Let's, for example, if you know students have drugs and you know about it and you don't report it, then if they found you knew about the situation, maybe you can have a trouble after that.
There are a couple of laws that can be incorporated in the movie, such as No Child Left Behind. This law means everybody has the equal opportunity and the same resources to accomplish the same goal, which is education. So all of them obtain the same education. But in reality, these students in Mrs. Johnson's class were not treated equally as the other students. As I said before, everybody would always put these students down and they wouldn't give them the right resources for them. And then another law was that we have is state versus scope. In this law, it talks about curriculum where a student teacher teaches a certain subject that he was not supposed to teach. And it's the same thing that Mrs. Johnson did. Mrs. Johnson taught other things that she wasn't supposed to teach, such as karate and poems. For the poem, she was supposed to teach My Darling, My Hamburger, but she went ahead and started teaching poems that were not relevant to the class, which is not a bad thing that she was teaching poems. It's not what she's supposed to be teaching. But yeah, another thing was the segregation. These students were segregated by de facto by stuff that people think of them, so such as their low socioeconomic status and their education level. That's why they were placed in that class. So that's another law that we found in the movie.
There are different issues that impacted the learning from students in the Dangerous Minds movie, and also several different issues that impacted the teaching of Mrs. Johnson. I think one of the biggest issues was that the students were low economic status students, and I think this affected them the most because they had a lot of problems in their homes, and they didn't feel identified with anyone. They felt alone, and on top of that, nobody cared about them. The school's administration didn't support them. They just segregated them in a group, and they just put whatever teacher in that group so they could has, but the principal had the mentality of one less student, one less problem. So they were really indifferent with this group until Miss Johnson came to the school, and at first she didn't know what to expect about it, and she even thought about leaving the job because she thought it was going to be really difficult to bring these students' scores to a standard level. But she realized that these students had a lot of issues at their homes. They had their parents were from a low economic status, so that affected them the most because they were like at home they had to work in order for their families to live and to have food and all that stuff. But so yeah, that it's a very important educational issue. Another issue that impacted was that the Mrs. Johnson didn't have the school support, the school's administration support, and she had to deal with it by herself. She made some things that didn't look good, and she did them without the school's authorization, but she didn't have that much options, so she gave it a try, and actually it was worth it because she actually made a difference in the lives of these students, which as a professor, as a teacher, it's the most important thing to accomplish, to make a difference in your students' lives. She made them feel supported, and she made a great job by giving them hope and cherish each moment she was with them.
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look.